Hey, Eastern Oregon. Welcome to AM Live on EOA TV, your connection to Eastern Oregon on this last day of November 21.
This year flew by.
I know. I can't even
It's
begin to
almost
get my head around
2022.
it.
It's Christmas again already. I feel like just like the other day I was making that Christmas video.
Yeah.
Seriously.
I know. It's just crazy, isn't it? You know, it's funny because I remember as a kid, I mean, like when I was 5 or 6 or 10 or whatever, like somewhere along the line, I calculated, I thought the end of my life, where would the end of my life be, And I remember thinking, I don't know, I'll probably die around 2025. That was kind of what I thought,
That was your guess.
Well, I mean that I think that's when I retire. I think that's when I'm 65. That's kind of what, right around that area, And
You're
so
gonna retire and kick the bucket.
I don't know, but when you're a elementary kid, you have no concept of you do think the retirement is the next day you're dying, And so but anyhow, so it's just so weird when it's like 2022. It's just
You
I
got
guess I'm
3
not
years
gonna.
left, BC.
I guess I'm not going to die after all. Yeah.
You gotta start making some moves.
Yeah. So
Frozen this morning.
It's frozen.
It was.
Yeah, I know. Chilly. I thought about you on the way to work.
I don't have a scraper. I have a credit card.
See,
what I use.
Yeah.
I need one of those scrapers with a mitt that keeps your hand warm.
I have one of those, but you and I have the same problem. Our hands are just so big, you can't hardly get them in there,
Yeah, it wouldn't fit anyways.
Yeah. Well, a credit card's done really well. When I was a kid, my mom had, they had those metal glasses.
Yeah.
So she used one of those to scrape the windshield, not understanding that she left these little circle scratches all over the windshield. My dad was so aggravated at her. I remember, like,
one of these days I should probably stop, somewhere and get a real scraper.
Real scraper.
I think there is one in my car somewhere, but there's so many bang cans in the back that I have no idea. It looks like a bang addict's been living in my car.
Yeah. Hey, so if you knew you only had a year to live, what would you do? Let's say if you
I'll just be with my family the whole time.
If you knew, yeah, okay. I mean, it's kind of an interesting question. If you knew when you were going to die, I mean, those are the kind of questions that movies are made of,
Yeah, I would just hang out with my kids and my brothers and sisters and my mom and dad.
Yeah,
people that I care about.
Yep.
I'm not too into traveling or seeing sightseeing. I mean, I'll do it, but it's not my. I just like hanging out. I like cooking good food and hanging out with my people.
So how was Thanksgiving for you?
It was good. It was we did it the day after. It was me, my mom and dad, my sister, my nephew, my baby Jane, and then my aunt and uncle. And it was really nice. My uncle's feeling better. He's realizing that he's like 80 years old and he needs to slow down a little bit. He still goes like he's like 50.
Yeah.
It's crazy, but yeah, it was good.
Cool. Well, hey, if you're out there, tell us what you did for Thanksgiving this year. And there's some, it was a cool weekend. I ended up, one of my aunt passed away in Wyoming earlier that week. And so Tanya and I made a flying trip to Wyoming, Riverton, Wyoming, which is kind of right in the middle of the state. And we drove. We didn't decide until Thursday to go, so we drove all day Friday. It's about 750 miles. Drove all day Friday, hung out with the family, and did the service on Saturday, and then drove back on Sunday. So crazy. I mean,
look at what Bud just posted in there. Really, Bud? I never said I didn't travel. Oh gosh. That's Georgia and Alabama, right? Yeah, Georgia and Alabama. Sounds right to me.
Wow.
I was feeling kind of crummy yesterday. It seems like I only feel crummy during the weekdays. You know why, BC?
Why is that?
Because I have a weakened immune system. It is Georgia and Alabama. That's going to be a heck of a game. The Iron Bowl was good, bud, man. Auburn and Alabama, holy mackerel. 4 overtimes. It was 10-0 going into the last quarter. Alabama came back, tied it up, and then they won it in overtime. I'm not like a huge Alabama fan, but that was a heck of a game.
A weekend immune system. So I'm still hung on that. So hey, let's talk real quick about Cam Designs. They're out just across the corner from Walmart and the new Asian place. What is that?
Panda Express.
Panda Express, yeah.
I was going to say Kung Fu Panda, but that's not.
That's a different thing. Anyhow, you guys should see our van. You'll see it soon. They have done a full wrap on our van, and it is just going to be the coolest looking stuff. And wraps is just one of the things they do. They do a ton of stuff. Anyhow, Frank is going to be on the show on Thursday with us. He'll be here and talk about his business. And so really good to have them as one of our sponsors.
Yeah, they do signs. They do high-end stoves, wood stoves for your house. They'll come out and check your chimney. They'll clean your chimney. They do all kinds of stuff. They'll service your chimney and everything to do with it. They have a really cool CNC that'll do like deep sign work. They did the local sign. It's really nice. My brother-in-law's opening a business here in town, and he got a hold of me, and he was like, who should I go to for a sign? And the first thing that came to my mind is Cam Designs. So,
yep.
Absolutely.
Yep. They're doing good. And it's a family business too, and which is just really fun because they're, I don't know, it's just it's husband and wife, and they have several kids, and Ryan, I want to say, their oldest son is one of their main, he works full time there. He's the one that's been working on the wrap for our car.
It looks good.
Yeah, it looks amazing. So
guess what happens today too?
What's
EOU volleyball opening their opens pool play today at the national tournament.
Wow.
They play a game today and a game tomorrow, and then the top team out of that pool of 3 teams advances to the final 8. So we should come out of the pool, I think.
Cool.
Yeah, exciting. That's in Sioux City, Iowa.
Wow. And all right. Well, hey, let's look at. It is kind of frosty out there a little bit.
Doesn't look too bad now. It looks better than when it looked when I got it to the car at about 6:45.
Let's see what Gabe says the weather's going to be like today.
Yeah, it's going to warm up. Wow. 51? Yeah. It's going to rain, though?
Yeah.
51, and then what's it going to get down to tonight? Lows in the lower 40s? That's not bad at all. For this time of year, it seems like it's really warm.
It is.
Like it's December tomorrow.
I know.
Should be snow on the ground.
See, I went elk hunting last week, and there's just no snow in the mountains, and so they're not. The elk aren't down yet. So, all right, and tomorrow.
BC, you ever been snipe hunting?
No, I haven't. Have you ever been jackalope hunting?
No, I know what a jackalope is, though.
Oh,
jackalopes. Where did that originated on a TV show?
Did it?
I think so. So tomorrow is very similar. Except for we're not going to have the rain, which is good.
Yep, looks like it's not going to be as rainy.
It's going to be 57 tomorrow, though. Like it should be like in the 30s all day this time of year.
I know. It was crazy. There was a point yesterday where it was just so warm out. It was like, the sun was out. It was just gorgeous. So
it's the weather's weird, man.
No, it's funny. We get back to jackalopes. We made a trip when I was in college. I went to college at Northwest Nazarene in Nampa, and we would go back and forth to Wyoming all the time. And we had a friend who rode back with us and somebody had mentioned jackalopes and like, oh yeah, you got to be real careful, watch for them because they'll puncture the tires and it's bad. And and we were just kind of joking, yeah. And so she was real quiet for an hour, and finally somebody said, "What are you doing?" She says, "Watching for jackalopes. I don't want us to hit any." Yeah, I was like, yeah, it was.
Laura said that her grass is growing and needed to be. Yeah, your grass should be dormant right now.
Yeah,
it's crazy. It's weird. That's funny. That reminds me of the old one where you tell somebody to check their blinker fluid or their headlight fluid or
you see those on Instagram all the time. It's like how that is. That's embarrassing. Well, hey, David Nelson is with us this morning, and we're going to run a little commercial, and we'll be back in just a minute. Hey, David, how are you?
I'm doing fine. Can you hear me?
We can hear you and we can see you.
Okay, sounds good.
So David lives in Pendleton, and you had a stint in the Oregon Senate. You were the Oregon Senate Majority Leader for a bit, and you were there. You were in the Senate from 97 to 2013. Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's pretty close. Yeah.
Yeah.
Somehow I managed it.
And you have written a book that you're going to talk to us here in about, but and then you served on the EOU board too.
Yes, right. That's when they state of Oregon changed it to regional boards, which I think was a good idea, and I think it was good for Eastern. And so I was fortunate enough to be able to sit on that, and I got off it I think a year ago. So.
Wow.
But it was a great experience. Eastern Oregon University is really an asset for this community. It's, you've got a great faculty, and I think Tom Insko as the president. He's not a traditional choice as a president, but I think he's the prototype of a new president for universities. Because it's more than just being involved in academics. You're involved in politics and community organizations, fundraising. It's you've got to have a deep background, and Tom Insko has that.
Well, cool.
Yeah.
Well, the common compliment that Insko gets is he's present.
Yeah.
That's what everybody says. Like that's a lot of athletes even say that. Like you go to a game or you go out on campus and you see the president just walking around. That's unheard of, but that's the common compliment that he gets.
Yep, it's a multitask position.
Yeah,
he's
right.
got to answer to a lot of people. From old ex-politicians like myself, over the hill people to the governor. He's got to be in good shape with all those people. So, and he does a really good job of it. So,
yep.
Well, cool. Well, David, let's back up a little bit. Kind of tell us your life in a thumbnail version, if you were, where you were born and how you got to where you are.
Yeah, well, I was born and raised in Pendleton, and I used to play basketball against LeGrand when we were all in the same league. And remember, there was a fellow from LeGrand by the name of Dick Turley who was about 6'4" or 5, and he used to beat us up pretty bad when we played. So I always had really good memories of LeGrand and doing things in that particular area. And so then I went to the University of Oregon and graduated from there. Went to the University of Montana Law School in Missoula, graduated from there, and ended up practicing law in north central Montana, a little town called Conrad, and it's up near, it's between Great Falls and the Canadian border. And so spent probably, I don't know, 14, 15 years practicing law. And that was kind of the basis of my book, one of the cases that I had at that time. And so I made a fictionalized drama of it. And I came back, and my family had a small wheat farm out here in Pendleton. And so I came back in the early 1980s to this area and farmed with my dad for a while. And then now my son has got it. He's turned the farm into an organic grain farm. And
Wow.
he's also very much, his name is Eric, and he knows a lot of people in the Grand Ronde Valley area. He's involved with St. Anthony ski. I think I don't know, whatever their organization is up there, but he spends a lot of time driving back and forth to St. Anthony's. And it's all part of our Montana experience and part of our Oregon experience. And, it's just kind of nice living in rural America. That's how I look at it.
That's right. Well, and so how did you, have you been writing all along? I mean, it's kind of an odd, you don't know when people are writers or not, or whether they've been doing it. Yeah. So talk about the writing aspect of it, if you will.
Well, it's, this is my first novel. It's debut novel, but it's I really have not been writing, but this is a story that this event affected me years and years and years ago. And I've sort of always been on my mind because there was a disappearance of a school teacher. And I think at the time I was in, early 30s, something like that, and probably didn't really appreciate the significance of the event and how many people it really affected. And as time has gone on, I've come to appreciate it a little bit more. I probably should have been a little more sensitive during the time. I mean, it was a case where there was a school teacher that went missing. She lived in a what they call a teacherage, where the living quarters were right next to the schoolhouse, and it was in a very rural area, like 25 miles from the nearest city, and it was there for the local farmers and ranchers and their children, so that they wouldn't have to drive 50 miles round trip every day to take their children to school. But she went missing, and in the real case, and my story is a fictionalized redo of the events, and so it really doesn't really follow the story, because in the actual event where the woman went missing, we did find her. She was horribly murdered, basically, and the fellow that we finally arrested for it and tried, and I was part of the trial, ended up with, he was one of the few people in Montana that was executed in the last probably 100 years, maybe 80 years or something like that. So it was one of those things where I don't think I really appreciate the significance, but as I've gotten older or younger, as I tell people, I'm telling people I just turned 20 this year, because I hit 50 and I bounced back. I couldn't go forward. So I just turned 20. So I'm going to live it again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
So
wow.
that's really what it's all about. And, it's kind of see if I can pronounce it, cathartic event for me. I sort of cleansed my soul, if possible, something like that. Well, and reliving the 70s, it's kind of an interesting thing too, because when I was looking at the events that's going on today in our life, political events and all the things that are happening. Well, basically, a lot of those things happened back in the 1970s. There was an issue in the president's office. And we have a president who's contesting the elections. Back then, it was Richard Nixon resigned, and we stopped the Afghanistan war this year. Back in the 1970s, it was the Vietnam War that we stopped. There was a racial unrest in the 1970s from Martin Luther King. That was still going on. And now we've got the racial unrest from the George Floyd situation, and we've got the COVID epidemic now, and actually then it wasn't really so much publicized, but the HIV epidemic was actually started in the 1970s. It really didn't become a big political thing or big public thing until the 1980s, and then the women's movement is going. There's the Me Too movement now that's happening. Well, back then it was the National Organization of Women that was starting their process, and I just read yesterday where the Supreme Court is going to take up the merits of Roe versus Wade. Well, Roe versus Wade was decided in 1973, so
Right.
we're kind of going through this circle again. Things kind of repeat themselves, and that was kind of part of my story too. I think my story is written from a woman's standpoint, and my heroine, the protagonist. I always think that's a crazy name, protagonist. That's supposed to be the person that you're supposed to. That's the center of the story. Is a woman, is a prosecuting attorney, and she has some relationships that she's involved in, and it's kind of how she struggles through all this. But in the 1970s, there were very few women attorneys, and I think now, if you look at law schools, probably half of the graduating classes are female. So it's we're things are changing and we're making progress. So and that's coming out of all this turmoil we're going through right now in our country. There'll be some progress come out of it, but we'll just chug along. We'll, as I tell my son, we'll kind of muddle through all this, and something good will come of
it. Wow. Well, and we've talked before about how there is a little bit of a cycle, and I'm sure if you went back another 30 or 40 years, there would be similar cycles, and each of those political events or each of those movements kind of advance a little bit one way or the other over time. So
yeah, and I think that's right. It's what's that old saying about if you don't look back at history, you're going to make the same mistakes that you've made before. And for some reason in this country, I think we have a solid enough sort of core value that we're going to come through all these things. And we have a pretty large divergent of views, urban, rural, and I suppose some male, female type things, and race is involved with all this stuff, So, but it's a complex world these days, and news comes about fast. I mean, look, we're on this program. This wouldn't have happened 70 years ago. So,
right,
it's really good.
No, and it's crazy. This wouldn't have happened 5 years ago. This wouldn't have happened 3 years ago. Yeah, and it's fine. We weren't really doing. Kyle and I have been doing. Doddsy and I have been doing this show for a year, and we just did it because of COVID. And
sure.
So. And we're actually in the same. We're just probably 20 feet from each other in the same building. You don't know that, but it's just the production is so much easier when somebody has their own camera and it's in front. Yeah, so it's just crazy how things have evolved and changed.
Yeah.
So I do have an interesting question or something I think that I'd like to hear you weigh in on. Is like, so you were the last Republican leader in the Senate of Oregon. And when did you end that leadership? And the question is how, when you look at Oregon over the last several years, and it has really shifted. I mean, so if you were the Republican leader, then it meant that there were more Republicans in the Senate at that time than there were Democrats. And clearly that has changed, and I'd like you to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, well, when I came in 1997, there were 20 Republican senators out of the 30 in the Senate. There's 30 senators in the state of Oregon, and so there was 20 Republican senators, and from 2001 to 2003, I was the majority leader, and in 2001, when I was elected, I think we were down to maybe 17. So we had the two-member majority. And then in 2003, the elections, we came out tied 15-15. And so I was no longer the majority leader at that particular time. But it's in those days, we had Republicans that came out of the urban areas. We had people out of West Lynn, and there was one out of Medford, out of the Ashland, Medford area, and one down, I think, out in south of Eugene. And so we had the type of Republican that came from the urban areas, and we don't have that anymore. That's gone. And it's just changing demographics. Oregon's gaining in population. There's a lot of people moving in, and they just have a different viewpoint. And I think the people in rural Oregon, where we live, are in the place where I always say that we're the soul of the state of Oregon, and because I think our values are such that we're more down to earth and more practical. Is that the right word? I don't know if that's probably getting into some kind of touchy ground here, talking about how people look. But the people now in the urban areas just look at the world differently than we do. I don't know. I guess you can't change that. That's just the way it is. And we have a lot of our young people that are leaving our part of the country. They're going to the urban areas. And I think you see that in the national scene. You've got the people from the larger metropolitan areas that have a different viewpoint. And it's hard. I would think it's hard to be a politician these days, at least coming from the rural areas.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's switch back to your book for a minute and talk about show us the book itself, because
Here's let's see if I can get this thing right here. Mariah is Missing. The book is Mariah is Missing, and it's if you want to look online, it's mariahismissing.com, and Mariah is MARIAH. You can see that somewhere or another. Get this thing right. So that's it, and it's, I don't know. I think from my viewpoint, it was really a kind of a changing event in my life to write it. I got this great satisfaction, but as I'm finding out, there's more to just writing the book than just writing it. You got the writing part of it, when that includes editing, and there's 4 or 5 different types of editing. You have to go through and proofread it and just check to make sure there's not grammatical errors. And then there's a thing called line editing, and then there's a copy editing, and then there's a development editing. And it becomes really quite a complex, somewhat competitive field too. There's a lot of books out there. This book is on Amazon. If people want to go look at it, they can go into Amazon.com if they're that, and just type in mariahismissing.com, and you'll come up with it. And you've got ebooks, you've got audiobooks, you've got paperback books, you've got hardcover books. And so I'm into ebooks and paperback books, and the different prices for those, because ebooks you don't have to print, paperback books you have to print. So, and for the next 2 weeks, I've got a sale on my book through Amazon at 99 cents for an ebook, and it's a promotional situation, and you do that. And so that's the one part of it. And then the second part is that you have to publish. So you've got all these publishing things. And I went through Amazon because Amazon's the largest book publisher and bookseller in the world. And so that's where you want to go. The problem is they've got 12 million books on sale.
Wow.
So how do you compete? How do you get your name known? So that's a big part. And the third part is that the marketing, and so,
that's how you compete.
Yeah, that's how you compete. And that's them coming on your show. It's basically a marketing thing. You have to be honest with these things.
Right. Yeah.
That's what it is. And so, I just ran a promotion through a thing called Goodreads, which is part of Amazon. But so I gave away 50 books, and I had about a little over 900 clicks on it. Gave away 50 books, and so now I'm looking for reviews. And so it's just kind of one thing after another. And then the advice that I'm getting is that I should write a series of books. I don't know if people are out reading. There's an author out there by the name of C.J. Box, and he's got about, I don't know, 20 or 25 books. And he writes about Wyoming. You're talking about Wyoming. He writes about a fish and game official in Wyoming, and he's done very, very, very well. So it's one of those things. So now the next thing is I've got to start writing a sequel, which I have started to do. And the other part of it is that you really need a team. Just for one person going out and writing a book, you basically you have to have a professional editor, somebody to come in and say, hey, this has some merit, this doesn't have some merit, and this is how you can change it, this is how you can't change it. And so I had a fellow out of Chicago that did that, and then your cover. I mean, my cover was professionally done. I mean, so you've got to try and grab attention. That goes to the marketing aspect of it. So somebody looks at the cover and say, well, I like the cover. I think that interests me. That's kind of their key thing. So you got to do that. And then you got to set up a web page. So that's something else there. So if you have that expertise, which I don't have expertise in any one of those areas, you got to hire that to be done. And then I hired what I call a publishing guru or a publishing agent. So it helps me with the publishing part of it. And this lady's from Philadelphia. So she's from Philadelphia. The editor's from Chicago. The cover lady was from Sandpoint, Idaho, and the web guy was from someplace in South Carolina. So it's a whole big thing. And actually, before that even started, for me to even get writing, I was having trouble, trying to figure out, what are you supposed to do here? So what I did was hired a ghostwriter, and that lady was from Seattle, and she was really the one that kind of said, well, okay, this is what you got to do. This is how you write a story. And that was about it. I started this back in 2020, just before the COVID hit. And then, of course, when COVID hit, then I had more time. We just weren't doing anything. And so that it's just kind of a combination of things that came together. But it's a very complex, one's a very competitive world, and but it's also very satisfying too from that viewpoint.
Nice. Yeah, well, I was going to ask. So now that you're on this end of it, and you probably didn't realize how much work it was going to be. Has it been worth it? I mean, has it been? Yeah.
I always tell my son that I'm a successful failure. So I'm a success in writing the book, but I don't. I've still got a heck of a lot of work to do as far as marketing is concerned. If that's one of the goals is to get out and to sell a book and become an author and to make your living at it and
right.
To do it. So I mean, I've got a long ways to go with that, and there's just more work to be done, and it is work. You have to look at it just like a business. What's your risk? What's your reward? And right now, the risk is greater than the reward.
You got to hit like fairs and bazaars and all kinds of stuff. You just got to keep pounding.
Yeah, pounding. And COVID has made that more difficult because people are not going anyplace, and so how do you get out and get to meet people and to do things, and so so I thank you. I'm very appreciative of the fact that you guys invited me on.
Yep.
And actually, I'm getting pretty good response in the local, in the regional area. That people have been very supportive and are buying the book and things like that. But but then you got to think that probably you should need to sell 10 to 20,000 books, and that's. When you think about it, that's pretty hard to do.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So it's like when you initially start, I'm sure it's like, okay, well, how many of my family members and my friends going to buy? And it's like, okay, well, that adds up to 100 maybe, now what? So.
And writing a book, one of the things that I found out is that there's a word count. You have to have a word count. And in the industry, the standard is if a novel is 60,000 words or greater. And if you write underneath that it's a thing called a novella. So I didn't have any idea. And then you can write a short story. That's, 1,000 to 2,000 words. There's a niche market for that type of thing. So it's just all these crazy. And this book that I have is probably about 75,000 words. And it was kind of interesting after the first edit, the guy came back and said, well, one, your dialogue is not very good, and two, your syntax, which I didn't even know what meant, what syntax was. I had to look that up. Your syntax is stilted, and you have to have better descriptions. And so I went back and actually added about 4,000 or 5,000 words. And so then the second edit came back and he said, well, you're way too redundant. So then I had to cut it back 2,000 or 3,000 words. So, it's one of these processes where you just got to keep going back. And then I think you get to the point where how much editing do you really want to do? At some point, you just got to say, okay, I'm going to go with this. Whatever it is, I'm going to go with it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I did. And so I've actually started rereading it again. One of the other things that they say as an author, which you should do, is that you write a book, or write whatever you're going to do, and then walk away from it for a while. And so I published this thing in September 10th. And so then I've been concentrating on the marketing part of it. But over Thanksgiving, I started rereading it again. And it's really kind of interesting because you think, well, yeah, this sounds pretty good, or this doesn't sound good, or I wish I would have done something different here and done something there. But then overall, I'm thinking, well, this isn't really too bad. Actually, for a first time go, and with the help that I had, it's going to work out. I'm happy and I'm proud of what I've done, and whatever happens next happens, and we'll just go from there. So that's how I'm looking at it.
That's interesting how with the books, it's like I do the same thing with my shows. Like I don't watch them right away, but I'll go back and watch like a show from a year ago just to like refresh my brain of like the stuff that I was doing that I made better and to give myself new ideas. But I won't watch a show that I do like I won't watch this show for at least a year, probably.
Sure. Yeah.
Same thing.
It's and you gotta have kind of a thin skin too with this thing, because people, one of the things you're trying to get is reviews, and I think I've got 14 reviews, and I had some folks from the Grand area do some what they call endorsements. Dixie Lund did one, and Abel Mendoza did one, Tom Insko did one, and they're different than reviews. But one of the reviews, I've gotten some 5s and I've got some 1s. So where are you in this whole thing? One of the reviews said, well, it's not War and Peace, but it was entertaining reading. So I thought that was pretty good. and the one of the negative reviews I got didn't write anything, which was, in some respects, that's not good. If you don't like the book, say I didn't like the book and why.
Yeah.
And in some respects, that's even more helpful than somebody saying, I really, really like the book, because it's really, it's really good.
They should just throw those out, because most of the time that's people that don't like you.
Yeah, that's probably true.
You know what I mean? They didn't read the book.
Yeah, has nothing. Yeah. You don't know. That's somebody you put in jail 30 years ago.
Really? That's how it works, man. It's crazy. Like they should throw out anything that has no writing.
Yeah. Do you guys have that trouble when you go in the grocery store saying, I didn't like your last broadcast or something? You have that?
I don't. I think most of those people don't say anything to us, but it's funny. I'm sure Kyle gets this too. I have people all the time, and they see me and they look at me and they smile, and it's like I don't have no idea who you are. But hey.
It happens all the time. That's why I don't go to the grocery store, but about once every 6 months.
Yeah. But earlier morning to late at night. Well, you guys should get into politics.
But it is fun when somebody says, "Hey, I really enjoy your content," because we don't get much. We don't. I mean, it's a lot of work, and we don't get much attaboys just because of the nature of the communication process. And so, but I had a question, and I don't know where it went, but.
Well, one of my reviews came from my ex-wife, who Alice and I had been married for 40 years, but prior to that, I had gone through a divorce, and actually during the time of the 1970s. But my ex-wife actually read the book, and really wrote a very nice review for it. So I was really very pleased with that.
That's
I
cool.
haven't seen her really for probably 40 years or 40 or 50 years. And
Well, that's nice. I know what I was going to. I know what I was going to say is that so there's a series on Netflix called Longmire. I don't know if you've seen. Yeah, and and then I've been listening to some podcasts, which are essentially books on tape, on stories of the Old West. And there is kind of a revival of rural writing, fictional writing, and that, I mean, I just think there certainly is a niche there for people to be able to fit into. I mean, there's a lot of interest. I watched all 6 seasons of Longmire, and I would watch more,
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
there's another program out of Yellowstone. People really are.
Yeah.
And the C.J. Box series is really good. And one of my favorite authors that I've always liked to read actually came from Montana and close to the area where we live. His name is Ivan Doig, D-O-I-G, and he's got a series of books about people coming over from Europe and settling in the Montana area and all the struggles and things that they've gone through. And it's really kind of interesting. It's how he does, this guy. I think this House of Sky. I think one of his English Creek is another one that he's written, and Dancing at Rascal Creek, and he has actually one called Ride with Me, Mariah, Montana, and that was sort of one of my inspiration for using the name Mariah was rides with Montana and that type of thing. But I don't know, the reading is just such a great passion of mine, and it gives you just a different view of the world. So so I'm really very pleased and very happy with that, with not only being able to write a book, and wherever it goes commercially, it goes. I've had the satisfaction of writing it, and that's something that nobody can take away from me. So I'm enjoying it.
So last question here, and then we'll let you go here. You had a law degree, you were a prosecuting attorney. Is that what it was? And then you were into politics. You've been a farm kid, clearly, and this is like I'm sure this has introduced you to a totally different group of people, maybe. And how, has that, talk for a minute about how that has changed. Has that expanded your life? Talk about that experience a little bit.
I think it's kept me young. You guys were talking about, getting old and thinking about dying and that sort of thing. Well, that keeps me from thinking about those things.
Yeah.
And and particularly to this time of COVID, it was one of these things where, I'd spend, 2 or 3 hours a day trying to write. And then I'd write things down and put them in a kind of an outline form, and then go through it, and then I have to re-edit it, and there's just things like that it's kept me busy. It's kept me involved, and kept me interested in doing something, and learning something new. And it's just amazing the things that I've learned with this thing, and the people I've met. Talking with people from back east to Sandpoint, Idaho, and Chicago, and Philadelphia, and it's just been a very rewarding experience. So I appreciate it.
It's awesome.
Well, very cool.
Yep.
Well, David, nice to meet you. Thanks for joining us. And if you're ever over here in the La Grande area, stop by the studio and meet us in person. We'd love to connect with you. Yeah.
I'd pleased to do that. I'm actually working with a group of people in La Grande, the recent graduates of Eastern DDRC marketing. I don't know if you know Cole and those group of guys. I'm working with those guys, and they're helping me. And that's another part of the team that's doing some really good work. And it's been fun to get to know those folks too. So I'll surely be thinking about you guys, and I appreciate the fact that you offered me the opportunity to come onto the program.
Yeah. Well, and if you need any video products with your book, let us know. That's what pays the bills.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. That is a good thing. I mean, see, I've now picked something up. So thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
You bet. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, let's get through the list. Ready?
All right.
On this day, which is November 30th, in 1487, the first German beer purity law is in Munich by Albert IV, Duke of Bavaria, stating beer should only be brewed with 3 ingredients. What are the ingredients, BC? I mean, what does it take to make beer?
Well, I don't know. So one is like rye, some kind of vegetable. Okay, yeah. See,
water.
Yeah. Okay.
Malt.
Okay.
And hops.
Yeah.
Water, malt, and hops. So the malt is the sugar. That's what feeds the yeast, and then hops is what gives the the aroma and the taste, and then water. Clearly, I mean.
So those are the only 3 components of most beers.
So that's the German beer purity law. In those days, that's the only beer that there was. I mean, them and the monks. That's it.
Wow.
So 1866, work begins on the first U.S. underwater highway tunnel in Chicago. So 1866, they built a tunnel underwater for a highway. 1900, on this day, a German engineer patents front-wheel drive for automobiles. Didn't have a name of the guy. 1900.
Okay.
1907, Pike Place Market was dedicated in Seattle on this day. 1924, on this day, first photo fax transmitted across the Atlantic by radio, London to New York. 1924, on this day. 1982, on this day, Thriller, Michael Jackson's 6th album, is released, and it won the Grammy Album of the Year 1984. Best-selling album of all time was released on this day in 1982. 1983, Radio Shack announced the Tandy Model 2000 computer. 1983, on this day. Last one, 2017, on this day, the world's longest recorded rainbow ever. It was in Taipei in Yangmingshan mountain range, and it was 8 hours and 58 minutes long. One rainbow stayed.
Wow.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's a long time. I mean, 8 hours, almost 9 hours. That's crazy. Okay, so the number one song in 1991 on this day was PM Dawn, Set Adrift on Memory Bliss. That was a great song too, man. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that was such a good song. Oh, I loved that album. I had that album when I was a kid. It was a great album. And then my quote for the day comes from Emma Watson. Don't feel stupid if you don't like what everyone else pretends to love.
Mm.
So don't feel stupid if you don't like what everyone else pretends to love. That's it.
That's a good word.
Yeah, I like that one. I mean, so I don't like fact check that these quotes come from the celebrities. I mean, I just find them, and if it says their name, it says their name. So, yeah, Emma Watson.
Good.
Yep.
All right, so real quick, Thursday, Frank from Cam Designs is going to be on the show with us. Don't forget that on Friday, there is the Twilight Christmas Parade downtown La Grande at 5 p.m. with Santa Claus singing stuff. What else, Kyle, is going on?
And Thursday.
Okay.
Keeping It Clear with Cody Bowen.
Yep.
5:30 with Chief Bell.
Yep.
So check that out. That's going to be it. And then sports show tonight through Friday. Weather, news roundup Wednesday, news roundup Friday. We switched to 3 days a week. Hey, do you know that video you made yesterday? I had to show Alex. It's really sad. Did you watch the video yesterday of you doing the tree?
No.
Right behind you on the wall, there's a big F-bomb.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in the video. I was like, Alex, come look at this. Look what they did down there at Max Square.
Oh.
There's a big F-bomb on the wall, and it just says beep right next to you while you're videoing.
That's sad.
It really is. There is still tagging up on the top of Northwest Furniture and Mattress. Like, why? Why would
Yeah.
you do that? I don't get it.
I don't either.
Pisses me off.
All righty. So see you Thursday
Thursday.
right here, 8 a.m.